hit that R to record. Okay, well, welcome everybody to the October 2020 ADUG Canberra meeting, and glad to see some faces here, which is good. As I said, mentioned before, Hilary and Don aren't able to make it this evening. I spoke with Anil today. He was going to see if he could hop in, but he might hop in a bit later, I guess. So I didn't get too much news. I know Vincent had some news the other day about the GeoForce bad stuff, but I think that's been covered pretty well in the emails and stuff. I was going to share my screen and share it.
Ah, Ian's joined us.
More Victorians than Canberrans.
Yeah.
Sign of the times.
Yeah. So welcome Ian. So you're on mute. You have to, hi. Good to see you. So yeah, a couple of weeks ago, or probably a month or so ago, we had a little quick survey about on SurveyMonkey about the meeting. So I just thought I'd have a quick look at the results.
I'm not sure this qualifies as big data, you know.
I know. There was only 6. No, that's right. Only 6 of them. So thanks to everybody who actually did reply. As you can see, everyone was either agreed or strongly agreed, just about everything. So it seems that we must be heading somewhat in the right direction. And
Might be skewed by the small sample size, though.
Yeah, that's right.
What was the sample size?
That's 6.
6. Okay. Oh, okay. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So it wasn't a lot, but I mean, hey, that's how many people we get at a meeting. So you might say it's a full sample.
True.
Yeah, so that was basically that. What else do we have? Not a lot. So today, Vincent's going to tell us about the SVGIconImageList, and he's also going to talk to us about interface forms and frames. So without further ado, I think I'll pass over to Vincent.
Okay. I will share my screen. I just forgot to make my font size a bit bigger. Is that big enough for you guys, or make it bigger?
A little bit bigger, please.
A bit bigger if you can.
Okay. It's waiting for the options dialog to start up. Takes forever in Delphi now. User interface, editor, display. Let's try that. How's that?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. Can't do anything about the forms, unfortunately, but there's no Zoom thing in here at all. So, okay, so I guess just a bit of a background on this was been using image lists for a long time as a way of managing lots of images in your application. I'm sure you guys all use them. I mean, I don't think you've used Delphi if you haven't used image lists. But with high DPI screens, using fixed size bitmaps is not very optimal when you start moving around to different screens with different DPIs. Sure, scaling a 16 by 16 bitmap on a toolbar or a menu, it doesn't scale very well. So I was looking for a better solution to, I'm currently working on high DPI support in FinalBuilder, which is turning into this mammoth task. But anyway, and then I came across a guy doing, I'm not sure what you can see when I'm screen sharing, so I hope you can see my browser here.
Yes.
Okay, so this guy doing this SVGIconImageList, and I had a look at it, and I've seen a few others around. TMS have one, but you can't get it unless you buy their entire VCL product, which I didn't want. And there's a few others as well. But this one looked the most promising to me, but it was missing a few features. Being that it didn't have an image collection and it didn't have a virtual image list. It was just an image list, which was not really any better than well, a little bit better than what we had before. But so I contributed the image collection and this virtual image list. And then between myself and the PyScripter guy and the author, Carlo Barrazzetta, I apologize to him if I've screwed up his name. We've kind of spent the last few months going backwards and forwards, refactoring, and they've come up with a very workable solution now, which works across multiple forms and supports high DPI. Now, I can't really show you high DPI support on Zoom. It's not going to work. You can't share two screens with different DPIs and that. So I'm going to fudge it in my demo here. So we'll just start off with the SVG, the components that it actually has. So there's an icon image thing, which is basically just an image control that supports SVGs. So you can go and actually specify, the actual text for the SVG and paste it in there, or load a file. So let's see if I can find a. Should have prepped this a bit better. Demo images. No, not that one. Let's do the Delphi one. So, pulls in the SVGs. SVGs are just XML. So text is great. You can edit them. It's much easier than bitmaps. So I can put in there. Now I'm displaying an SVG file, just like it would be a PNG or a bitmap, or and it handles transparency and all that sort of stuff properly as well. The other thing you can do with this particular control is hook it up to an image list. So if I give it an image list, and then I get the image from the image list itself. Anyway, I'll step back a bit and start at the beginning here. So one of the things you want to do is not have, like, if you've got multiple forms sharing the same images, you don't want to have them loaded into memory multiple times. So you don't want to have, I've got, in this particular image list here, I've got 300 odd images, and I don't want to load 300 images on each form, because that's, resource intensive, memory intensive. So what you can do is have, in this case, I'm using a data module, and I've put the image collection on there. And if you right click on it, you can open up the image collection editor, which then allows you to go and add and remove and move around and name and so on the images. So these are all SVGs, and you can control, I want to make them all grayscale or color, and you can change the grayscale amount. This UI is not ideal for changing this, but anyway, you get the idea. So this collection control, if you're using Delphi 10.3 or 10.4, it's actually descending from the image collection class that was new to 10.3, I think it was, which supports PNG. So we've leveraged the existing infrastructure there, but if you're using older versions, then it's still available as an image collection. It just doesn't support the high DPI stuff. So I've just loaded in. I just grabbed a folder. Oh, it's actually, I lied. There's not 300. There's 654 images in this particular image collection. So I've just put that on a data module so I can share it. So you'll notice on here there's a few settings as far as that just brings up the editor again. It's a little bit slow when you've got that many images. There's a few options on here, but most of them, unless you're playing with the grayscale stuff, you don't really need to play with. So that's, if I just view that form as text. Oh, hang on. Let's close that. Okay, so here's our SVGs. And so normally if it was a PNG image list, you'd see a bunch of hex data in there for the images instead, but here it's actual text. And so it's quite a large DFM file, but doesn't really seem to have any performance issues because it's quite easy to parse. Right, so if I look at my main form here now, I've got a virtual image list. So this is just the standard Delphi virtual image list that's available in 10.3 and 10.4. If you're using older versions, there's an SVG virtual image list, which basically replicates what this does. But it doesn't support the knowing about high DPI because it doesn't get notifications, because the high DPI support that they built into 10.3 onwards leverages the system messaging stuff, which isn't in the older versions of Delphi. So, so I think this actually this supports back to, let's have a look. I think it's XE6 as far as it goes back as. Yeah, XE6. XE2 was me attempting to get it to work on all the versions, but there was too many problems. So I've got a virtual image list here, and if I show the image list editor, it's actually showing me the images that came from that that collection. So there's a image collection property over here on the object inspector, which I've hooked up to the shared image collection that's on the data module. And using, so this is basically virtual images it's a standard Delphi thing in 10.3, 10.4. And I've just said autofill, so it actually grabs all of them. But I can actually, if I turn it off, and should be a way to clear that. I can clear it in there. All right. So now if I click add here, I can go and say, okay, which particular images do I want from the image collection? I don't have to use all of them. So I might, add that one. So it's like that. Oh, select 4. Add those. And so I'm only using those particular images in the image list. So you notice my icon's disappeared there. Or I can just go clear that, and then come in and go autofill, which basically grabs all the images from the image collection object. So like I said, I can't show you the high DPI stuff here, but I can show you how nicely the images scale. So if you imagine, let's make that 16 by 16. 16. Let's run that. I'm not sure how well you're going to be able to see that image there where my mouse is. But you can imagine if that was a PNG 16 by 16 image PNG or bitmap, how well is it going to scale it when you need it to go to 24 or 32 on your 4K monitor? But the good thing is, I can scale it large as I want, and if it's drawn well, then it'll scale well, basically. So what I did was just to show the different image sizes here as well oops, I've made that actually a bit big. So there's a button with an SVG image on there, by the way. So here's my standard 16 by 16 toolbar, and I've put another form in there to simulate the high DPI stuff, where those same images, I've just made the toolbar a bit higher, but the button's a bit bigger, and so the images are a bit bigger. That scales really nicely, and I've not noticed any performance issues with this at all. And in FinalBuilder, we load all the images into the image list at startup, as the packages are loaded and all the actions are registered, they register the images. I'm about halfway through, 1,000 images in there, plus there's another 1,000 other images in the product. And the only thing that's slowing it down at the moment is it's raising exceptions because I'm trying to load PNGs into SVGs. As I'm slowly converting them all, I haven't done them all yet. So it's fast. It works. There is 3 different SVG engines in this library as well. So there's a TSVG library that's the standard built-in one, and there's also a Direct 2D support, which only works on Windows 10. I think post the creators update, something like that. It doesn't support text elements though. So if your SVGs are drawn with text elements in them, it won't render them. You'll just see black blobs, I think. And there's also, someone's just recently added Cairo support. So Cairo is another vector graphics engine that was popular in, I think it's part of FireMonkey. Not FireMonkey, yeah, Firefox. So that's another option. And one of the guys has actually benchmarked all the different SVG engines, and there isn't a clear winner depending on what SVGs you load. Some do better, some engines do better than others. I'm just sticking with the TSVG one, which seems to render everything pretty much so far that I've thrown at it. So, and it's unlike the Direct 2D one. If there's a problem, you can fix it. You can go into the source and try and understand how it passes the, because it's SVG is just XML. It's quite easy to fix. So. There's not a whole lot more to show on this, really. I mean, the controls are, it just feels like you're working with normal image lists once you get it set up, So, there's images here when you click on a button, and you can go down and look at the images, image index, it's the same. So that form has, this project has 600 images in the image list, and it's passing them to display them on the form here in the image list itself. So there's almost no performance hit to loading them up. I thought that I was a bit worried about, if you have a large number of images, how slow is it going to be to render them? But I'm not seeing any performance issues at all. It's really fast. I mean, if you look at the source code for most of these, go and look at the. If you look on the image collection, it'll actually show you the source code for the actual SVG files. So, so we pick that one there. It's just a bunch of XML paths and so on. You can see these have been drawn with Inkscape because it's got mentioned Inkscape version of this. You can also, the other thing is, I forgot to open it up. Just give me yeah, this one here. So this site here, which I'll put the list. I'll give Steve all the links to these. But so I can take that SVG there and paste the markup. So there it is there, and so you look down the bottom here at how much it minifies it. So let's copy that back again and copy it back into here. And it's a lot smaller. Oh, and I actually messed it up. That's interesting. That happens sometimes with SVGs and different SVG tools. That's rather disappointing. Let's try a different one. Let's try that one. You might need to mess with some of the options on here to actually get, it's actually quite, I think it's, I was using this a few weeks ago. You have to play with the options to where, if you find weird things like that happening. I see it's messing it up. So I probably just have to, quite often that. Anyway, like I said, you get the results vary, but you can minify the images down quite a bit. And some of the graphics tools like Illustrator and what have you, put it in Inkscape, put a bunch of information that is just there to make it easier for them to edit the file again later, and is not needed. So you can strip all that stuff out, and that's what this tool does. I don't know why it's actually messing up that image, but anyway. Anyway. The other thing you can do with this thing is, and this is not a SVG specific thing, this is actually the image collection thing in 10.3, is you can set categories on images. So you can say, you know, make that a maps category. And then, so then you can filter them by categories, which can be useful if you're, so you might have a category that is, you know, set category. Yeah, so then when you come into click on that, to the form, come on. So come in here and say let's clear that, and then add to toolbar icons and say so I just want that particular category of icons in this image list. So it allows you to you know, subset your images from that collection, so you can put them into your image lists a bit easier. So you don't have to load all the images from the collection into the image list. The other thing that this library also does is grab a standard, so this is just a standard T image control here. And if we go and look at the picture and click on that now and click on load, you'll notice that it's got SVG as an option here now. So it adds the SVG image format to the VCL, so that T picture actually knows how to load SVGs. So yeah, we can actually, come on, I did select that, didn't I? No, obviously not. Oh God, no, it wasn't. That was working earlier on. Okay, I don't know what I did to break that. This was working before. You can just use normal SVGs in a normal image component. So I'm not sure why that's actually not working. Anyway, we'll come back to that. So yeah, this library has actually been a lifesaver, because I didn't know how. So when I started doing the high DPI support, I was actually using the built-in image collection and virtual image list from Delphi, which if I just grab that, actually, I'll show you quickly. So T image collection. Basically wants you to collect images of multiple sizes. So each image, each toolbar image or each icon, you'd have 16 by 16, 24 by 24, 32 by 32. And it gets really tiresome going to find an image that you like and then creating images of all different sizes or standard sizes for every single one. And I got a few days into doing that and just thought there's got to be a better way to do this. And so with the SVGs, you're just doing it once. Find one image and you're done. And there's plenty of image collections out there on the net, on websites that you can pay $9 a month or whatever to get access to their images, for SVGs. I'm mostly using the Axialis image collections, which are not cheap, but they're pretty good. And this image icon generator tool is pretty good too. It's got some quirks and what have you, but I've kind of got used to it. So I can say I want a document let's find a document thing. Annoyingly, you can't say only show me images that I've licensed. It shows them all the collections, and only the green ones here are licensed. And then you can say, oh, actually, I want to have, you can't search on these overlays, which is a bit annoying, but let's say I want to have a erase thing. So there we go. There's my array, image array, a document arrays icon generated for me, and I can move the overlay around different places and so on. And I can even change the color of the overlay, you know. So you can quickly make up images, and you put them into collections. So I've got, you know, I've started creating image collections for FinalBuilder, and yeah. So the annoying thing is that after a while, you think, oh, yeah, that's a great icon. That's perfect for what I need, and then you start looking through your other icons, and you go, oh, actually, I used that to mean something else somewhere else 3 weeks ago, you know. So then you're sort of scratching your head. Okay, well, what else can I use that means document arrays or whatever, you know? So trying to come up with a consistent set of icons that, you know, where if you have the base icon, you know, so you can see here I've done property sets all have the same base icon, and then the overlays are different for the different actions. It's when you've got a lot of icons to do, it can be a bit confusing, a bit, you know, you rely on you to remember to go back and check you haven't used things before. And this tool doesn't allow you to pull in third-party icons. It only works with their images, which is really annoying because it's a good little tool, but it would be far more useful if I could pull in the extra icons that I want to use, you know, externally when they don't have one that suits. So, and then for editing SVGs, just in general, it's fine. Yeah, I've been using this Affinity Designer. I think I showed this last month, just quickly, which is just it's an alternative to Illustrator, but it costs $79, and you pay once, not every month. And for most things, it's as good as Illustrator. I actually have managed to get reasonably proficient with it fairly quickly, whereas Illustrator, I can never really get to grips with it. I find the UI a bit too confusing. So I mean, the main thing on this is the node tool, you know, which allows you to, you know, add. I'm going to add a node. Come on, node tool. Is that the right one? Oh no, node tool. There we go. Node tool allows you to add nodes in, and then you can click and drag and do weird shit quite quickly with it. Yeah, and yeah, it's really flexible. Most of the time, what I'm really doing is sourcing images elsewhere and then editing them to suit, you know, like, or I'm taking bitmaps that I've found elsewhere. Let's grab a bitmap from somewhere, an icon. Let's grab that one. As long as you grab a reasonably high resolution bitmap, this Vector Magic tool will convert it to SVG for you. So that's just, it does an amazing job. Yeah, it's ready to export as SVG. And then quite often I'll open it up in Affinity Designer afterwards and tweak it a little bit, you know, fix things up. Vector Magic is not free. It's about, I think it was about $150. But I tried every SVG to, you know, PNG to SVG converter type website and tool and known to man, and this was the only one that actually did a really good job. So I've used this on probably 20 or 30 icons now, where I couldn't find, you know, product icons for actions in FinalBuilder, where I couldn't find SVG versions of the icons. And so I just got the PNG and converted it here. And it does a pretty good job. So So obviously this was a fairly simple icon because it's nice flat colors and simple shapes and things. And other ones it won't do quite as good a job. So if we go back, let's try it. We can find the MS Build one. No. No. Just try to find a package that I would have done already. That's
Can you use SVGs for program icons?
no, that would be a Windows feature. You think you would though, wouldn't you? Because I mean, even now, you know, Windows has you creating icons with multiple resolutions in them at the moment to deal with the scaling, and even that doesn't work that well. You know, and SVG is not a new file format. It's been around for 20 years. I mean, I remember working with SVG stuff in web pages 20 years ago. So, you know. Yeah, so here's a good example of something that's not going to work too well in this Icon Magic tool. It doesn't do a great job. It's just there just isn't enough detail in a 16 by 16 icon to convert it to vectors. So if you're going to try to convert PNGs or bitmaps or whatever, it's got to be a reasonable size. You know, there's got to be enough detail in the image for it to pick out. And you can, I mean, you can tweak it. So if I come in here and say, let's do the high thing, and then you go edit results, I can come in here and you know, you can sort of tweak the original image to try and give it a bit more of a go, and then, but at the end of the day, it's not going to do a good job. So, but it's a very useful tool. You know, considering how much time I spent trying to hand draw icons myself, it was worth $150. You know, what's $150? Couple of hours work. You know, so it was worth spending the money on that. These icons, yeah, I mean, I needed a lot of icons, and I needed to create consistent sets. So, I mean, I probably spent $600 or $700 on icons. I'm not suggesting everyone will want to do that, but I wanted a set of icons that were consistent, you know, consistent theme, like so all drawn in the same sort of style. That's a lot of icons. That's one set. You know, another. Obviously, you know, some of them aren't very useful, but some are very useful. Yeah. So. I'm managing to get most actions that I need out of these icons. The only ones that I'm not getting are the ones where the action is actually targeting a particular product, like a Subversion or Mercurial or Git, in which case I'm using the product icons to create the icons anyway. So I think that's about it for this particular library. Any questions about that?
Thanks, Vincent. Couple of thoughts. I kind of wish I had this a few years ago. It would have been really good. I've been using the TMS Smooth pack for some various controls, but it has an image container primarily for PNGs, but you can refer to them by name, which I found really handy because I load up I don't have anything in the design time. I put everything into a resource file.
Yeah, same here.
And I load up all the images at load time. And I just feel I'm in better control of the names and everything like that, and it helps sort of avoid that duplicate problem that you're referring to.
Yeah.
Just that virtual component, is that kind of just like a proxy type container?
Yeah. So it's the bit that actually does the rendering. The collection is just a bit that loads up the images into memory.
Yep.
Because I mean, you got to remember these are it's just a text file, an XML
Yep.
file, basically. So it's just a container, like a T collection under the hood, basically. And then the image lists themselves actually do the rendering of the images.
Okay.
So it converts them into bitmaps in memory.
Okay.
On the fly.
Yeah. So can you load them up as a resource, as I was mentioning?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing in FinalBuilder.
Okay.
No.
But you're still referring to them by numbers.
I am.
How do you refer to
because when I load them from a resource in FinalBuilder and register them with my image my action service, it registers the icon image list and image index and makes it available to the application through another service. But you can, this library does support naming everything. So it's actually generated names here automatically based on the file names.
Okay.
And the categories. But you can name them yourself here. Yeah. So this is actually a feature of the image collection that's in Delphi 10.3 and 10.4 that works for PNGs and bitmaps as well.
Yeah.
You can name them. Now, it's a fairly new thing, and then you can actually select. I'm going to find the control that actually allows you to set the image by image name, which not also some controls only still have the image index, but other controls actually allow you to specify the image name from the collection.
Okay.
Image index. No, I've seen them. I just can't remember which ones it is that actually support it. It's typical in Embarcadero. They haven't actually fully rolled it through everything yet. But the functionality is there in TImageList and TImage collection and so on.
I did have a look at that TImage list, and my head spun. I couldn't work it out. But
the UI for it's a bit not optimal. Took me a little bit to get my head around creating the multiple image sizes and so on. Because you're using TMS actually have an SVG image list as well. It's part of their VCL product pack, I think.
Okay.
At one stage anyway, it didn't support a lot of the elements of the SVG files, and I saw some notes on the forum that some people found that it was not worth the effort of bothering with.
Right.
I don't know whether it's improved since then.
Yeah. I don't know. I actually was quite excited when I saw it announced, 6 months ago, whenever it was. But I didn't want to buy all the TMS controls because I don't need them.
No,
I just wanted to buy that one, and they've basically gone the Dev Express route now, where you have to buy everything.
But I've got TMS, and I played around with it a few weeks ago, as well as with this one, and I didn't bother with the SVG, with the TMS one, because there's bits missing. It's just not complete enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we've put a fair bit of effort into actually making this library usable, and especially the PyScripter guy. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his name, but he put a lot of effort into optimizing the built-in SVG rendering engine, the TSVG. And making sure that it actually does, he fixed so many bugs, and so it's actually pretty good now. Every now and again, I'll come across something that doesn't quite render properly, and I usually find if I just go back and either redraw the image or just run it through the optimizer again with some different options, so it's a slightly different SVG, that'll be enough to get past that. So.
Okay.
And you can try one of the three different, the Cairo one you have to deploy DLLs with if you're using the Cairo engine. Direct2D I still want to be able to support older versions of Delphi with my products, so I'm not using the Direct 2D thing because it only works with Delphi 10 with Windows 10. So, but yeah, so far so good. Every now and again I'll see a black blob, and have to go and investigate what's going on with that, or try and debug the actual SVG rendering and figure it out. But I haven't had to do that very often. And it's still getting commits to it every couple of weeks, with bug fixes and tweaks and performance improvements, and so it's turned out to be quite a very useful library for me anyway.
Just one other, I don't know if you're talking about having consistency in your icons. Just out of interest, I've been using streamlineicons.com, and they had a special a couple of years ago, and I grabbed their sort of pack, and it did a major upgrade. It's got bucket loads.
Right.
It's not a few are free, but so you do this. Go to the search there. You can sort of browse things. It's got different types of packages and things.
Okay.
And they come in SVG and PNG formats out of the box. So
do they have colors in them as well? Because these all seem to be...
Some packs have colors. Yeah.
Right.
If you go to if you go to the search link, which is up near the top, back up the top, search, download, and copy.
Oh, all right. Okay. Yep. Okay, it takes you to a web app for it.
Yeah, you can kind of browse by topic and things. It's a bit slow.
I find a lot of the sites say if you search for like a new document icon, it'll give you 50 different ones from 50 different image sets, and I just want to stick to one image set.
Yes.
So it's a case of finding that one image set that, which is why I went with the Axialis stuff.
Yeah.
So this with Axialis, I'm using their Office Pro 2019 thing, and then that's the set, but then each one is a collection as well. So
okay. Yeah,
and you can buy them individually. You don't have to buy them all. You can buy each. So the green ones here are the ones I've bought, or are free. So. But yeah, there's loads of websites. That's why I said earlier on, just with SVGs, it used to be, it's not easy to find SVGs, but most image vendors like this now, they're drawing them in SVG and then rendering them to PNGs on the fly, because they want to be able to scale them, and combine them and so on. And nobody in their right mind is drawing icons now as bitmaps. It's just nuts to do that these days.
Yeah.
So.
Good.
Vincent, yeah, I've got a question. Does this image list work with regular controls or not? Because
any control that supports image lists, yes. So, I mean, that's why I just get back to Delphi here. So that's just a regular T button that supports images. Annoyingly, I don't think you can specify the button size, the image size on here at all. Image alignment. Don't seem to be able to specify the image size on here, so I'm not sure how it's working out what size to render that image on there. But that'll be something I'll have to deal with, I guess.
And what about license?
It's open source.
Well, there's lots of open source licenses.
Yeah, did I have it open? I did, yes. License is Apache 2, which is a very permissive license. So it's a license I actually use because you don't need to use attribution for it or anything like some of the other open source licenses do. It's basically use as you wish. So.
And is this available on the package manager yet?
I believe it's going to get it. Whether it's gets there or not, I don't know. Because are you talking about my package manager or get it?
Both, really.
It's not on my package manager yet because I'm still working on installing visual components. But anyway, I'm not going to show any of the package manager stuff tonight because I'm doing the package manager thing for John in Melbourne next month, I believe. So you have to go along to that meeting. Hopefully I've made a bit more progress on it by then as well.
Something to look forward to.
Yeah.
Yes, we are looking forward to that one.
I've actually been doing quite a bit of work on it on evenings and weekends and that lately. So I've made quite a bit of progress. I've actually have it running, compiled and running in XE2, 3, not 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 1, 10, 1, 10, 2, 10, 3, 10, 4. The only reason it's not working in XE4 at the moment is because Spring for D library is not compiling in XE4. It crashes the compiler. So Stefan Glank is working on that. So yeah, and getting things to style properly in the IDE and what have you is rather tricky. Maybe I'll give you a quick preview, but I'm not going to show much. So this is 10.3 I'm using here.
Why 10.3 rather than 10.4?
Because I don't have an official 10.4 version installed at the moment. I can't show you the version that I do might have or cannot say I have installed. Actually, I probably could because you wouldn't notice. I just have to blank my screen while the splash screen comes up. Anyway, so this is a project that just a demo project, but I notice this is an item in the tree here now. Ignore the icon because I'm discovering that the image indexes in Delphi are different for every version of Delphi, so I've got to go and figure those out. And this was done by hacking through RTTI and all sorts of shit to get into the virtual tree view that they use here. So I can right click on there and there's my packages installed in this particular version of Delphi. And I'm going here and search for packages. Let's do Spring extensions. You can see the dependencies. I'm going to click on here and install it. Oh, okay. All right, bugs. Anyway, let's try another package. So that's installed. It's not much to see really because it hasn't installed any design components. It's just updated the search paths and to reference my package cache. So anyway, it'll install. So this library actually depends on different a bunch of libraries, and it actually pulls in all the dependencies as well. So and so I change the theme. Oh, why is the Delphi options dialog so damn slow? So it's handling the themes inside the IDE mostly. So we notice the scroll bar is not themed there for some reason. So oh, that's not themed. Why is that not themed? Yeah, still it's a work in progress anyway. I'll show more next month because I would have got a bit more working by then, hopefully. Still a lot to do to get the design time stuff working. Using the tools API has been a bit of a learning curve for me as well. So I've not really done it before. So yeah.
I use a lot of my own packages.
Oh yeah, so do I. But actually getting them, getting the IDE to load them up in the right order and and then unload it. So, you know, what I want to happen is when I close that project, is when I open that project, I want it to find out what packages and libraries are used by that, and just load them automatically for me. And when I close the project, I want to unload them. So I only want to see in here third-party stuff that I'm actually using, you know, for that particular project. So, I mean, if you look at this, and then come and look at Visual Studio, manage. Now you know where I get the ideas from. So, I've been using the NuGet in Visual Studio for, I don't know, 10 years now, I guess, since NuGet came out. And it's well, maybe not 10 years, I don't know how long it is, 6 or 7, but it's made dealing with third-party libraries trivial, absolutely trivial. Yeah, it's none of this, you know, like every Delphi developer that you talk to will have a different way of managing their third-party code. And I'm just tired of it. I just want a standard way to install something. You know, every third-party vendor like TMS, DevExpress, every open source project, they all have different ways of installing things. And it makes it very complicated, especially when you go to a new version of Delphi to actually get things up and running again. You know, I could take this, you know, so these packages are installed in here now. I can open this project in 10.4 and it will automatically go and resolve and download and install these packages for Delphi 10.4 if they exist when I open this project. So in theory, when you're moving to a new version of Delphi, it's literally a case of, as long as the package manager is installed and the packages are available for that new version, you should be able to just open up your project and it will load up and compile and work, in theory, anyway. But, you know, it's never that simple at the moment when you're dealing with third-party packages. So anyway, I'll leave the rest until next week.
Oh, it's a few weeks off.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, not next week. In a few weeks' time. And I'll close that one. Close that. Okay, so just finally, where are we? Where's my demo gone? ADUG demo. You guys, you know, any more questions about the SVG stuff or anything?
Not at the moment.
No. Okay. Well, this was just something that we mentioned a few weeks ago or a few months ago about using interfaces on forms and frames and things like that, which I thought would be useful to cover. So a lot of people kind of have this misconception about interfaces, is that they're for working with COM objects only. And I use interfaces everywhere. If you look at my code, there will be barely a form or a unit anywhere where there isn't an interface used. And it's not, you know, obviously it's not without some hassles, but you soon learn your way around what reference counting is and so on. So this is just I'll just run the app quickly. It's a very simple demo app. So just with a couple of windows and a couple of controls and what have you. So what I'm doing here is, in this example, I think I mentioned this last time, a typical example, and one of the reasons I use interfaces on forms and frames is that if you look at the interface section in this particular tmain window here, all of this stuff is public. So if I reference this form anywhere else in my code, whoever's working on that code can access all of that stuff, even though they probably don't need to, and they just wanted to, you know, add something to the memo, for example, or check if a button's enabled or disabled or something. Yeah, it's kind of you know, the whole thing about interfaces is an abstraction, but it's also about hiding stuff you don't need to see. So so for example, in this case here, I've got this log view here that I want to, different parts of the application to write log messages to. So, normally if you're just using forms, what you do is you pass around a reference to the form everywhere, and they call main form memo1.lines.add. But then, 3 months later, I decided actually there's this new control here that I want to use instead of a tmemo. And then I've got to go around everywhere in my application where I've been writing, main form.memo1.lines.add or log memo or whatever it's called. You're going to replace that with whatever the new interface is on that control. So, basically, it's a mistake that Delphi made in its language design to make everything that's on a form public, basically. This is a private implementation detail, and it shouldn't really be exposed to the rest of the code. So in this example, what I did was, so I've got this frame that actually implements my iLogger interface. So this iLogger is just a single method to log a value, with a particular log level. And so my log frame, it's adding lines to a memo just like you would anywhere else, but it's an implementation detail that the rest of the application doesn't need to know. So on my main form here, if I look at where flogger is set, so I'm basically saying that my log frame, I'm casting that as my iLogger because the log frame actually implements iLogger there. So you can, so a lot of people think as well with interfaces that so if I add that to my frame or my form, then I'm using reference counting on the frame or the form. Well, you're not, because if you trace back up from T frame, T custom frame, keep going, T win control, T component, and if we look for add ref, T component add ref here, it's basically returning -1, which basically tells the compiler that, or tells the VCL or the RTL that reference counting is not happening. It still makes those calls, which is a bit annoying, but still. So if we go back to my log frame, so my T frame implements iLogger, and here on my main form here, I've placed that frame on this tab here. So there's the log frame 1 on that tab sheet. And so I've just got a reference to the interface here, and then I'm passing that interface in wherever I need to. So to another frame on the form, also to, when I show that other form, I'm passing in the logger to the constructor of the other form. So my second form wants to log to that memo, but it doesn't actually know about the form, the main form. It just knows about the iLogger. And so when I click a button on this form here, that's just calling flogger. It's not calling tmain form memo1 lines, and exposing that implementation detail of the actual log. So just to show that it actually works, so there's my, on the main form, calling the iLogger debug. And then I can show another form here and go and log an error back to there, but I've just called flogger error. That's all I've, we go back to that second form. So there's the call to the logger. So so I've passed around a reference to my frame everywhere around my application, but it doesn't know that it's a frame or how it's implemented. It just knows that it has one method, log. That's all it is. So it frees me up now, so I can come in here and say, well, actually, in my log frame, where's my log frame? I say, well, actually, let's swap out that memo and make it a list box instead. And the only place I have to make the change is here. Okay, so change that to list box 1 lines add, or whatever the code implementation is for that particular control. Or it could be a fancy custom control that does color logging and all sorts of other stuff. But the main part is that the rest of the application doesn't have to change. So that's basically just hiding stuff from me, hiding all the implementation details of the form. And so I do that in FinalBuilder, pretty much every frame, every form will be implement some interface or another if I need to reference it elsewhere in the application. And I do the same with things like, so if we look at actions. Oh, actually, look at the Delphi one because it's got locks. So each one of these tabs here is actually a frame, and these frames all implement a standard interface, iProperty page, and the rest. And this particular dialog, the host dialog, it doesn't know that it's working with frames other than when it instantiates them, but it talks to them through the interface. It doesn't know about any of the controls on here, and these frames don't know anything about the form that they're on either. They just know that they're on an iProperty page host or something like that. So it's a good way of abstracting things. So here's this particular log here. Again, implements a bunch of interfaces. This view here implements a bunch of interfaces. Same here. Same here. They're all just. And so whenever, say for example, in here, when I want to add an action, I click on there, it's not referring to the action list or the target as a T frame, virtual list view, add item, whatever. It's talking to an interface to do that. So I could swap out this virtual list view, virtual tree view for something else if I wanted to, but it wouldn't mess up the rest of the application. So another thing that I did with interfaces on this form here is, main form. I've got these clipboard buttons on here, clipboard actions. So let's look at our action editor here. So I've got edit, cut, copy, paste actions, and I want to have these buttons enable and disable and operate on different parts of the application depending on where the focus is. So this is kind of an abstracted thing that I've pulled out of FinalBuilder that I've implemented for lots of things. So I've got this clipboard controller class, which implements iClipboard controller, which just allows you to set or unset the clipboard provider. And a clipboard provider just has some basic, can I cut, can I paste, can I copy, and then the actual cut, copy, and paste implementation. So I've implemented that clipboard provider on the log view. Can copy, yes, if the memo's actually got some selected text. Can cut, no, because the log view is read only. So can paste, and then copy is just log memo, copy to clipboard. Cut and paste don't do anything. And then on the main form as well, I've implemented clipboard provider on the main window as well. So if we look here, it's looking at, sorry, that's actually for the actions. I'll come back to that. On the second form, I've implemented, no, sorry, not on there. Where have I done it? I wrote this a few weeks ago and haven't really looked at it since then. Main form. It's this memo frame. So it's just another frame. It's also on the main form as well, where I've actually allowed full clipboard facilities for this. And so what this does is when the memo gets focused here, it actually calls into the clipboard controller and says, set the provider as me. So that means that those actions now are talking to me to know whether they're enabled or disabled. And if you click on cut, copy, or paste, it comes to me. When I lose the focus, it actually removes me as the provider. So, and then the same with the log frame. When it I actually didn't implement that on there. Why didn't I do that? set provider. So when the main form gets activated, by default, it's setting itself to be the clipboard provider. So anyway, if we run that now, so I've got debug, log an error. Right, so if we look there now, see our toolbar icons are completely disabled. If I select some text, then copy becomes enabled, but paste and so on don't. Go into this memo here, and you see that paste is actually enabled. There must be something in the clipboard. And if I select, then cut, paste is enabled, copy, paste, and paste is enabled. Oh, I didn't actually implement it on here. I could have implemented this. So this was also the clipboard enabled as well. So basically, what all it's doing is actually is allowing you to direct actions to a particular part of your user interface just through some simple interfaces. I've seen a lot of applications where the clipboard only works if you're in a particular area of your application. If I look at FinalBuilder, for example, why did I close that? So this is where I implemented this particular idea. Oops. Oh, sorry, it is running. Too many copies of things running. So, cut, copy, and paste here is different to cut, copy, and paste. So if I want to copy the target, for example, and then paste the target, it's different to copy the action. Oops, well, that's interesting. Edit, copy, edit, paste. So there's different things that you might want to cut and copy, and different objects you might want to support the clipboard on in your application. So this is a way of having these controls here. There's these clipboard buttons and so on, edit control. Just directing them to something that knows how to manage cut, copy, paste on them. And that's all done just through some simple interfaces. So basically these two interfaces here. And then one object to actually implement the clipboard controller itself. So not a lot of code to give you, quite a lot of flexibility elsewhere in your code, and all done through simple interfaces instead of going, well, if the focus is on memo 1, then enable clipboard through if the memo 1 has, it's a lot of abstraction over a bunch of really complicated logic otherwise. So, anyway, any questions?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment that I've always found the copy and paste in FinalBuilder fabulous.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I wonder if I can copy and paste from this project to that project. And it just goes across, and it just makes it so easy when you want to do things that are similar but not quite the same, or are the same, but you just want them in separate projects.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you say, for example, you copy an action in FinalBuilder, it's actually serializing that to XML in memory, and putting it onto the clipboard.
Yeah.
Pasting is a nightmare in FinalBuilder, by the way, because if the action list or the target is a tree, and so working out how to actually inject that into the tree visually and also with the object model underneath as well, and keep them in sync. That's quite complicated and quite a lot of code for that. But the actual handling of the enabling and disabling the buttons and all that sort of stuff is just done through what I've just showed you tonight. It's quite simple. So
have you got some demo code that you can share, because I can hardly read that.
Oh, really? Yeah, I'll put this up on GitHub.
Thanks. Yeah.
this particular application, I'll stick it in a repository and put it on GitHub.
It just
later
looks
on.
like an extension to the way I've used interfaces, so it's something extra to learn.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, like you know, I started using interfaces when they first came out, and initially I was like, oh great, I can create ActiveX objects, you know, excellent, you know. But then you know, you sort of delve into the you know underlying you know how they've actually implemented it, and you realize you can actually use interfaces for anything, you know. The only annoying thing is to be careful of is, say I pass my iLogger interface around here. It's actually implemented on this frame. So where's my log frame? If this frame gets destroyed and I've still got an iLogger reference somewhere else, that will be a dangling reference, because nothing, it doesn't, you know, your reference, interface reference doesn't get nilled out automatically for you. So you need to be careful about managing how long you hang on to references to non-reference counted objects. So, you know, for example, say I had, run that again. Come on. So I had an interface on this form here, and I was holding a reference to the interface in my main form. And then I closed that without first getting rid of my reference here. Nothing bad will happen until I try to use that interface reference again. So if I go, you know, my I second form dot show something, you'll get an access violation. So you just have to be careful with that. Whereas when you're using proper reference counting with interfaces, the fact that you've got a reference will keep the object alive, and that's not the case with forms. So it mostly comes into bite you during shutdown. You need to clean up properly during shutdown. So that's just a minor gotcha with them.
Yeah.
You soon learn how to use it properly.
On your window, your cut and paste icons, or your copy icon was being enabled and disabled when you selected text.
Yep.
Is that polling the interface, or?
Yes. If I show you on the main form. So if we look, I've got these actions here.
Mm-hmm.
So if we look at copy or paste even. So look at the edit, paste, execute. I'm so used to, in Visual Studio, you can use the scroll wheel and control to actually zoom in and out of your code. And I keep doing that in Delphi now and it doesn't work. So I'm just calling here, it's in the action list update to enable and disable these actions. It's calling into the clipboard controller, say can cut, can paste, can copy. And that delegates out to whichever the provider is at the moment. So, so if the clipboard is a provider is actually the log, then it'll be calling into these methods.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll put this code up on GitHub so you guys can and send Steve a link to it later on tonight.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah.
So to answer John's, it's not really polling. It isn't polling it.
Well, it kind of is actually, because if we put a breakpoint in here,
but doesn't it run those when there's a pause in the?
Yeah, it's calling it basically like on idle.
Yeah.
Your main message loop. So, but it is actually polling. You know, in the background polling. So yeah, obviously, you know, in your can cut and can copies and can paste methods, the last thing you want to do is anything that's lengthy processing in here. It literally just needs to be a simple statement that's returning true or false. Because otherwise, you find that your idle processing time on Windows goes up quite a bit.
Yeah.
So.
Would it make any difference if you put it into a T application on idle?
I think T application idle actually calls out the code underneath all that actually calls into the action lists to do the updates. So
Yeah,
I don't
just
think
the on idle.
I don't think it would make any difference.
But it only gets called once until there's some other work done.
Right. I don't know. I just use the events that are there on the actual on the action lists themselves.
Yeah.
It's running the on update. I guess you could.
Well, the simple way would be to put a like a debug message right in out when it happens, which not to the application but through the debugger.
Yeah, output debug string or something.
Yeah.
I don't know if this will work or not.
It might not.
No, it works. So I guess the question is, no, it does actually eventually. It's the annoying thing is that because it's changing the focus, it's causing the event to trigger again.
It will because it on idle. As soon as there's any activity, then it will come and call it, but it just calls it once. It doesn't call it repeatedly.
I suspect that will be the case for these as well.
With handled.
Let's try this, shall we? Do I need Windows? I've already got it. Probably should have put a counter or something there. Yeah, I thought that was going to be the case.
P-char or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can see it's sort of stopped. I move the mouse, it goes for a bit. Well, that's interesting. Move the mouse away, it's sort of ticking a bit. So yeah, I think it's done in idle processing. So it's pretty much the same thing as doing it in application on idle. I guess the thing as well is if you've got a bunch of action lists on your form, you know, you'd end up with a bunch of code in one place in your application on idle, which might not be what you want.
You got time to throw that into an on idle? I'd be curious to know if it does the repeated call.
I'm going to need to go. I've got another meeting coming up. So thanks very much, Vincent. Thanks, Steve.
Okay, no worries.
See you in a few weeks. Bye.
See you, John.
Okay. Bye, John.
Bye.
Yep. See you, John.
See ya.
Yeah, it's kind of the same behavior. It stops when I move the mouse out of the window. Put the mouse in the window, it keeps going.
Okay.
I guess the reality is that most people using an application tend to have the mouse over it most of the time in any case.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the thing is as well is that you want these to be responsive as well. So
Yeah.
if the state changes underneath, you want your UI to your actions to reflect that, and the UI to reflect it as well. So as soon as I highlight that, those actions, those buttons are enabling and disabling.
Yeah.
Actually, if I switch to there, so it is very responsive. So yeah, but anyway, the net effect is exactly the same whether you do it on the application idle or whether you do it on action update and the action list. So I'd hazard a guess if you go and look at the code underneath the action list, it actually just taps into the application idle anyway.
Okay.
Yeah. That was my understanding of it.
Yeah. I'm curious. I might have a look into that.
All right. Any other questions or observations or suggestions?
No.
Play first.
Sorry, what was that, Sue?
Got to play with it first.
Righto.
That's when the questions will come.
Okay, I'll chuck it up on GitHub. I don't think we can share code. Can't share code.
I had a go at putting interfaces onto some frames after we had this initial discussion. In the end, I got caught with, particularly in one particular application, which had a lot of stuff that just wasn't closing down properly.
Yeah.
So in the end, I created the interface and made the frame sort of internal to the interface. And then that way, the frame handling was straight frame handling, and
right.
I just created the interface and used that. So that's another.
Yeah. So what you're basically doing is creating an object that owns the frame.
Yes.
And that object is reference counted.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, as I said before, you can get caught out holding on to references of objects that have been destroyed. So the trick is, even with reference counting, for me, the rule is you only hold on to a reference for as long as you need it. So try to avoid, long-running reference counting, where you've got an object, a global object hanging onto a reference, for the whole life cycle of the application. And I kind of do that. So, like for example, that clipboard thing. So I've got that clipboard controller class. Which basically is a wrapper over the clipboard providers, and the providers, when they get the focus, they say, hey, I'm the clipboard. They call set provider. When they lose the focus, they say unset provider. So basically, the clipboard controller is releasing its reference of that provider. So if we look at the clipboard controller, it deals with the fact that there may not be a provider there.
Well, the reason I was doing this was not that I was creating the forms or frames multiple times in the application, but I was using it in different applications and I wanted to share the code.
Right.
But it was the way I was using it in the different applications was different. So it wasn't just a matter of...
yeah. Well, I have to admit, when I first started doing this, first started using interfaces everywhere, I had loads of problems with it, with application shutdown. And it was just about understanding the life cycle of things in your application.
Yeah.
Knowing when it's safe to keep a reference to something. And, I mean, my cleanup code is always, I nil out, if an object is not reference counted, I nil it out as soon as possible, because there's always that temptation to use something that's not around anymore. But the other thing is that, so for example, So this log frame implements, iLogger and so on. If I destroy this frame, let's actually wreak havoc here. Put a button on the button go. Log free. Oh, what happened there? So you know what actually happened there was I freed that frame, and then the action came in through the interface, the iLogger interface there. And the reason for that is that it didn't know that the actual the frame had gone. It still had an interface reference, through. If we look back through the call stack here, it's in the application idle, clipboard controller, and then can copy, and so it didn't know that the frame was gone. So actually, what I can do is here is
But is that any different to then if you were just playing with forms directly? I mean,
yes and no. Not really, I guess. But there is another gotcha which I was trying to demonstrate, which it didn't work. But I'm just going to try this now.
oh, don't get me wrong. I'm a fan of interfaces too. So
yeah. What I was trying to because I've got this action thing going in the background, it's not going to work. But what can happen is that you free the form or the frame, for example, and you've still got an interface reference. When that interface reference goes out of scope, the compiler automatically adds a call to release to underscore release, because it doesn't know that the object is not going to be there anymore. And so on shutdown, or when your interface references go out of scope, you'll start getting access violations then, because it's calling release on an object that's not there anymore. So even though you're not doing reference counting, so I remember I showed you when you draw back up to T component. Come on, Delphi, you can do it. Come on. Oh, it's not going to go there now. Unreal. Yeah. Oh, hang on. Let's try that one. No. Okay, here we go. So even though add ref and release here both return -1, which basically says don't do reference counting, the compiler still inserts calls into these methods if you're using interface references. So when this logger goes out of scope, okay, it's a bad example because it's a class level variable. But if it was a function level variable, when the function exits, that variable goes out of scope, it'll call release on that interface reference. It expects it to be there, so because the compiler's inserted the code for it. So that's just something to be aware of. The add ref and release and stuff will be called. So nil out your interface references as soon as possible when you're not using them, especially before you destroy the object that actually is backing that interface reference, like the frame or the form, for example.
cool. Has anybody else got any questions? No? Okay. Well, thanks very much, Vincent. That was really good. Well, both the SVGs and the interface forms and frames. So glad we could make it this month. And
yeah, wasn't any vehicle accidents or anything.
No, that's good. So does anybody else have anything they want to bring forth?
Just thanks, Vincent. I enjoyed that. It was interesting. I'll have another go with the SVG icons when I get a chance to draw some.
Yeah, ditto. Very good. Thank you.
All right, no worries.
All right. Okay. Well, if there's nothing else further, then I'll close up for this evening. Thanks everybody for attending, and
Thanks, guys.
hope you all learned something like I did. And
See you next
Next
time.
month, Steve. You got
next month,
plans?
exactly. Let's have a look. When's the what's good for everybody for next month? We don't have a speaker as yet. I tend to go for that 4th week because otherwise we're starting to get very close to December, and then people start to get very busy over that time. So probably the 24th, 25th or 26th of November. We'll find out once we have roped somebody into giving us a presentation.
Now, I'm not quite sure whether I'll be able to make it or not. It just depends. Rob's having a hip replacement done on the 20th, I think. So it'll depend on whether or not I'm on hospital duty or just got him home or whatever.
Right.
I'll try and make it, but at the moment I'm just not quite sure what's going to be happening.
I'll excuse myself. Thanks, guys. Thanks again.
Okay. Thanks, Ian.
Thanks, Ian. See you.
See ya.
Okay. I'll stop recording.